Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever been challenged to define the so-called healthy lifestyle practice? Drop your comments below for discussion. Be sure to subscribe. It definitely helps the channel to grow better. Your kind support is highly appreciated and invaluable. Instinctively, a very natural spinal response to the challenge is to do more exercise instead of to watch for food's intake. Naturally, many have concern that life with less than 3 meals a day is incompatible with life or good health. Living in a world whereby foods are abundant and highly accessible means 3 meals or more a day is a norm or culturally acceptable. On the flip side, this translates to a high chance of metabolic health risk due to food overconsumption, in particular, high carbs lifestyle. By nature, young children are born in a state of ketosis, during which their brains are at a critical period of development. Brain cells are capable of using ketones, but not fatty acids, as energy to build brain structure. Obviously, ketones, but not fatty acids, can cross the brain barrier. Blood-brain barrier is a fascinating thing, only allowing limited substances to cross over, and reduces harm to the delicate brain. In actual fact, damage to the brain, due to oxidative stress, could occur if the brain were to fuel fatty acid as energy source. Naturally, breast milk is low in sugar. In essence, it's a low-carbs, ketogenic food to young children. Formula milk has higher sugar content. Hence, formula-fed children are at higher metabolic health risk and overweight. When the newborns are being exclusively breastfed at the beginning of their life, they utilize ketones as a fuel, during which their brains undergo the most active stage of growth and remodeling. It does not make sense to turn around to argue that glucose, hence the carbohydrates, are largely brain exclusive in terms of energy fuel. Undoubtedly, these newborns are in ketosis by exclusive breastfeeding. In conclusion, the notion that brain exclusively uses glucose as energy source defies the logic scientifically when we know that newborns develop their brain on ketones. Do you know that the brain can function efficiently with ketones without glucose? Years ago, in one of the ethically approved starvation study, a man was metabolically switched to ketosis by water fast for 40 days. The prolonged starvation generated very low glucose level with concomitantly elevated blood ketones. He was then physically challenged by a dangerously low blood glucose level following an insulin injection in the background of already super low blood glucose after starvation. By the standard of modern medicine, one can argue that this man could have been coma or death. By God bless, he remained cognitively intact after blood glucose falling below 1 millimole per liter as a result of insulin injection. Paradoxically, his blood ketones dropped when the glucose level went lethally low, indicating that the ketones had crossed the blood-brain barrier to fuel the brain to keep him cognitively intact and symptoms-free. In other words, he was in clinical state so-called asymptomatic hypoglycemia. This study supports that the brain can survive and function efficiently on ketones without glucose or carbohydrates. Therefore, the myth that the brain only naturally uses carbohydrates as energy source is absolutely senseless. The efficiency of ketosis gets degraded as human grows older, attributed to poor metabolic health due to chronic exposure to high carbs environment. Metabolically fit individual has a capability to quickly switch from glucose to ketone fuel by way of ketosis. So, how do you define good metabolic health medically? Check out the video link below to learn more. Unlike metabolically damaged adults, children with healthy metabolic health have highly preserved ketosis ability. The metabolic switch to ketosis works way faster and more efficient in young children to fuel the developing brain. In general, metabolically healthier individuals with fast metabolic flexibility have lower risk of hypoglycemia symptoms during fasting state. When some degree of ketosis remains intact, a person who were clinically defined as hypoglycemia are usually asymptomatic and cognitively well. The modern human, who are not keto adapted, due to long-standing high carbohydrates lifestyle, may succumb to death when the blood glucose is depleted after a prolonged starvation. It's worth to note that a person who first practices ketogenic diet may experience dizziness. This nonspecific dizzy spell is not associated with hypoglycemia, rather, it's called keto flu, during which the blood pressure falls, as body sodium and fluid retention impaired, due to improved metabolic health. This drives the blood pressure to drop, with transient dizziness. In other words, a metabolically fit person has lower risk of high blood pressure. What on earth is metabolic flexibility? A metabolically healthy person is capable of switching glucose to fat as fuel, or vice versa, way faster to stay healthier. This reduces the risk of dementia. Those who are insulin resistant have less metabolic flexibility. These people are at risk of fat toxicity when first practicing ketogenic diet. The key answer to the solution is to do medically supervised fasting, or perhaps short-term, protein-rich low-carbs diet, to improve metabolic flexibility. In order to achieve positive metabolic benefits safely, one needs to do it right, preferably under close supervision by the doctors, in particular those diabetics already on anti-diabetic therapy, like insulin therapy, for fear of rare, harmful ketoacidosis. Nutritional ketosis is generally considered a safe body response following fasting and low-carbs diet. Ketosis confers central appetite-suppressing benefit to prevent overeating. In contrast, high insulin promotes hunger sensation, with associated risk of overeating. Remember, total calories intake does not drive weight gain. Rather, frequency of calories intake and high carbs energy source drive insulin resistance, hence, accompanied weight gain. A metabolic benefit may be achieved by ketogenic diet, time-scheduled fasting, or prescription of metabolic pills. Ironically, a sustainable low-carbs diet stands better chance of diabetic reversal, while the standard care in modern medicine only delays the chronic disease progression towards the end-stage organ failure. Whatever the treatment modality selected, it fails without so-called sustainability. A desired metabolic goal may be achieved easily. The lack of mental perseverance in behavioral modification explains the risk of reversal to an old-fashioned gratifying lifestyle. Take-home message: metabolic syndrome is a chronic disease. A chronic disease, by definition, is incurable. A sustainable low-carbs lifestyle is the key to metabolic syndrome and diabetes reversal. Remember, brain fueled well by ketosis, and glucose is not naturally and exclusively used by brain as energy source. A good metabolic flexibility diminishes risk of dementia.